Welcome back to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we have real conversations for modern parents who want practical support that actually works in real life. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a former teacher, co-founder of LaunchFamily, and mom of 7. Today's guest is Elise McVeigh, an etiquette educator and business owner who's been teaching kids and adults for over 22 years. Elise has built an original curriculum of around 60 lessons. And what's unique is how she makes it not stuffy. Her lessons are reinforced through storybooks, short videos, games, role play, worksheets, and age appropriate activities so kids actually engage. Elise teaches everything from meeting and greeting to table and restaurant manners to carpool manners, being a good guest, conversations, and even topics like bullying and social confidence. And she also offers curriculum in areas families keep asking for, like organization and financial citizenship, which, let's be honest, most of us didn't get that in school. Elise is based in Dallas, offers both in person and online options, and she's here today because she's seeing a huge shift. Kids and adults are struggling with basic conversation and social ease. So, Elise, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay. So I want to get into a little bit of context. You've had this business for 22 years. Take us back. How did you get into etiquette education? What was kind of like the why behind that? Or did you notice something and then try to fill a gap? Or tell us about that journey a little bit.
So I've always been about manners. So when I wrote my book, I had to answer that question. How did you get into this? And I remembered my two favorite books were The Polite Elephant by Richard Scarry. And then there was a Raggedy Ann and Andy book called Thank You, I Love You, Please, something like that. I don't think it's around anymore. And so I thought, okay, I've always wanted to have good manners and others to have good manners. It's just sort of my thing. So after I had my third child, I wanted to get out of the house and do something. So I decided to do some public speaking. And so my mentor said, pick some topics, and etiquette and getting organized were the ones that sort of stuck. So I was giving a talk to some adults and someone said, you should do a kids camp. I knew nothing about, I'm a journalist and then did fundraising. So I didn't know anything about having a kids camp, but I said, oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. We had 7 kids. I think 2 were mine, 2 are my sisters. And like I borrowed a kid from a friend and we had like 2 legitimate, who really signed up. And over the years, I just sort of grew it. And as my kids got older and I had more time, I kept on doing different things and it just launched into a full program.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Like, what a story, too, of like it kind of just happened, but also was something that you'd been passionate about from when you were younger. So that's super cool. In today's day and age, when people hear like a manners class, right, they might imagine something stiff or old fashioned. So, how have you like refined your approach to define etiquette in a modern, kid friendly way?
Well, it's funny. One time I had a mom who threw her 3 kids in the car and said, yeah, you just have to help them. So they get there and I'm like, well, do you know what we're going to do today? And they said, she threw us in the car and told us on the way that we're going to this manners class. And we honestly thought that you're going to be some old lady and make us put books on our head and walk. I was like, no, we're not doing that. And this is probably 15 years ago. So I was a lot younger. And I said, nope, we're going to make it fun. So I just sort of learned over the years just to make it more interactive. I mean, I had no education background. I've never been a teacher, but I just sort of figured it out that the sillier I was, that the more that they responded. So I would do a role play and do it the wrong way. And that is what they thought was so funny. So then we came up with a character, Professor Mannerd. It was based on a neighbor of mine, and I had him do these short videos way back when we used to send newsletters, video newsletters. And that just sort of grew. It grew into a DVD, and I've now just branded all of my curriculum with Professor Mannerd. I'm sort of good cop, he's bad cop. He's a ding dong who does everything wrong kind of thing. And then I have 2 dogs, Dax and Ashton. I've brought them into the fold and they now do manners tips. So I have an app where the dogs talk and we'll give a manners tip of the day. And so kids think it's great.
I mean, what you're describing right now, like, I'm a mom of 7, my oldest is 10, and I'm like, I think my kids would eat this up." Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah, I mean, it really
sounds like
is fun.
so fun. Yeah.
It is. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a lot of fun.
yeah, and then one of the things too that really stood out was you had said something that is really a big deal, which is that kids today don't know how to have conversations. And honestly, many adults probably don't know either. So how has that like shifted, or did you notice a specific event or time in your career that did make a shift?
Yes.
And how have you kind of adjusted your approach, or like what would you say, I guess, what is the response to that, I guess?
So way back when, I don't remember how many lessons I had, but I think it was the basic table manners type of things. And probably 15 years ago, I started getting phone calls from parents saying, my child does not know how to speak to adults. Can you give them a private lesson about that? So after getting so many calls, I thought, okay, this conversations and good listener, those should be lessons that we add to the curriculum. And they're really so important, so needed. And so one of the role play things that I do after we teach the lesson is I'll say, okay, get a partner and I want you to have a balanced conversation, come back with 3 things that you learned about each other. And I also do a demonstration where I'll have a kid come up and I'll say, okay, I'm going to be a difficult person to talk to. I want you to ask me questions. And so they'll ask me something. I'll say, yes, no, I don't know. And they, of course, start laughing. And I'll say, well, that's how adults feel when they're talking to you, because very few kids really, I mean, they just, for example, my kids are now young adults, but one of them they've always been very polite, but he would say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because we live in Texas. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but it's not having a conversation. You need to ask people questions about themselves and let it have a natural flow. So that's something that a lot of people struggle with, even as adults.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that takes me back to when I was teaching. I taught kinder first and second grade, and we would have what we called like our morning meeting, and that was a huge part of that time was like, okay, we're going to greet someone by their name. We're going to practice having eye contact. Like, oh my goodness. Unless it's explicitly taught too or modeled over and over, sometimes it just doesn't sink in, right? So I love that you have that resource available to families that are needing that extra support, like, how do I actually teach my kid how to do this? What are some of those other, you had mentioned specifically like the shorter responses, right? Of like yes or no. What are some more of those common conversation breakdown moments that you see with kids or maybe even adults that you've worked with?
Well, something I'll say to the kids first, I'll say, why do you think some people have a hard time talking to people? It's confidence, they're shy. And I'll say, you cannot be shy. You have to speak. And they don't know what to say. So I'll tell them to look around a room, see what the person's interests are, or they're in a car with someone else's mom. Maybe they have siblings. You can say, "Oh, well, tell me about your other kids." Just think of something, but I'll say, "What is small talk and what are topics that anyone can talk about? The weather, sports, it's, holidays. What are you doing on spring break? What's going on this summer?" Just things that I said, or you can even come up with topics that you're ready to go when you see someone. And I think that that gives people confidence if they feel like they're shy and never know what to say to people.
That's a great idea. And you gave some examples. So like weather, sports, holidays. Um, is it good to like think about those topics that you're comfortable talking about or what you think other people would be interested in talking about, or maybe a mix of both?
I just think that they're just topics that anyone can talk about. So in Texas, for example, so my dad and stepmother, they live in Buffalo, and my stepmother would say so she used to be a smoker. So she was like smoking in the lobby of a restaurant. She's like, the hostess felt like she had to talk to me. I mean, it just annoyed her. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. We're just friendly here. So I just think that people in Texas, they're just friendly, conversational, but that's just so easy, hot enough for you. Just topics that are just so easy for people. Or what's everyone's favorite topic? Themselves. If you ask people questions about themselves, they'll just think that you're the best conversationalist ever.
There you go. Hot tip coming in.
Yes.
Um,
People
Ask them
love talking
questions.
about themselves.
For parents that are listening in right now, can you give parents like a simple starting point? Like what should they expect from their kids socially that they might not be expecting right now? Or how does that change, I guess, with their age or development that you've noticed?
I would say start young. I mean, we start kids at age 3. Any manners skill that you want, just like we're told to read to our children or do flashcards. Same thing with manners. You just have to be on it all the time. So, for example, I had a son who I did not like his tone of voice. He might say something, yeah, yes, I will do this, but he'd say, yes, I'll do this. I would just say it again. Okay, say it one more time until he got it right. Or at another one who would not say please and thank you when he was little. So I finally said, if you don't say please or thank you, I don't hear you. So I would just ignore him and then he'd say, please. Oh, sure. Yes, I'm glad to do that for you. So you just sort of have to work with your child. But I'd say the key is consistency. Just like if you threaten them, we're going to turn around the car if you don't behave. Well, if you don't turn around the car, then they know that you're never going to do it and they're going to keep on doing the bad behavior. So you just have to be on it all the time.
Consistency. I mean, I feel like we talk about that on so many of our episodes too. This is no, outlier in that sense. So one of the things that you had also mentioned is that because it also starts so young, we can assume that it also starts at home, right? Like we can't rely on an educational system or, wait till they're in kindergarten to kind of figure these things out because by then we've already lost a little bit of time. Um,
Yes.
so is there a simple script that a child can use when they see an adult that they don't know that maybe parents can maybe teach their children? How do they, I guess, kind of navigate some of those social things as they become more independent and into school age?
I would say role playing is good. So, for example, I would pull up the car to, let's say, a play date. And so I would park the car. I'd say to my kids, okay, you're going to meet Mr. So and so and Mrs. So and so or Dr. So and so, or the wife uses a different name. And so I'd tell them what their title and their last name was. And then I'd say, show me how you're going to shake hands. And when we teach uh, meeting and greeting, you're supposed to stand up straight and tall with your shoulders back because everyone's slouching because they're all on their electronics. Everyone has bad posture. Straight and tall, looking confident with good eye contact, firm handshake with your right hand if you're able, and a clear and loud enough voice. A lot of people look down. They have a weird handshake. Like I get a lot of this sometimes. I don't know why, especially men. Like will go like, I'm like, what are you doing? Uh, but yeah, make sure that it's really firm and you say, "Hi, I am your first and last name," or probably a play date. They know the parent, "Hi, Mr. So and so. So good to see you." Practice. And then you can say, "All right, now Mr. So and so is a physician." You could ask him about, did he have a good day at work? Did he see any patients today? Just sort of give them social cues that they feel like they're ready and do it right before that moment because otherwise they are going to forget. So then you walk in the house, and if they do forget to extend their hand, you can just sort of on their elbow, and that will give them the cue. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to shake hands.
I love that. And like the scripting right before, because I think that that's another thing is that there is
Yes.
so much going on in their little brains. That,
Yes.
like until it becomes natural, like the more
Right.
support you can give them, the better. I think another one that comes to mind, so that was with adults, is like with friends. So how do you teach kids to introduce friends, and why do you think that that matters more than parents might realize already?
Well, something I always emphasize is with friends. First of all, if you're at a friend's house or if a friend's at your house, how the siblings are treated is a big deal. So I would always tell my kids, be nice to the little brothers, sisters, big brothers, sisters. So that's and also to acknowledge everyone in the house. Acknowledge the parents if there's a grandmother or a nanny or other siblings. Make sure that you say hello to everyone. Obviously you don't have to shake a kid's hand who's your age, but just, at least say, hi, how are you? So we'll also do a role play of good guest, good host. And, kids will just sort of walk in the door. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you have to be invited in. You need to say hello. So the three things that we teach is that you you knock on the door once, you don't look through the window, knock on the door, and then the host says, hello, please come in, please have a seat. Would you like something to drink? But a lot of times they just forget the hello part. And, one kid walks in, the other one's like, have a seat. Like, you didn't even say hi. You didn't even say hello. So make sure that you always greet people. These are just things that don't occur to children
I love
and to some adults. Like, did you have a work situation where they just come to your office, they're like, and you're like, good morning. How are you? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, well, same thing on the phone. Oh, that's a problem. People do not know how to speak on the phone, especially young people. It's like you have to say goodbye before you hang up. And I used to have a son who would say, they knew the conversation was ending. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, you have to say goodbye. Let's do it again. So
I
it's
love that. Oh my
very
gosh. And
real. The struggle is real.
yeah, no, and there's so many different contexts too of like even if you're at the grocery store or you go to a restaurant, right? And like how you greet your waiter or waitress, whoever is serving
Yes.
you, it's like, oh yeah, like that is totally another example that happens in everyday life. Um, and I think you brought up an interesting point too when you were talking about being a good guest because I think times as well as like with adults, sometimes we forget that too. And so even taking a moment for those that are listening in to reflect on like, oh, well, how would I want someone to treat me when they come to my house? And maybe that's what I could then practice when I go to other people's house. Cause your kids will pick up on it if that's also something that you're modeling for them a lot or often, right? And we just
Absolutely.
don't get together in those social circles as much as probably we have ever historically, where we're not going to dinner parties. We're not going to hang out and like maybe it's super informal, like a, front yard barbecue or something with your neighborhood, but not necessarily like crossing the threshold. So I think that's helpful context. Given what you're, given what else you're sharing about adults that are also struggling, like nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Is kind of this universal sort of breakdown. But what are some of like those non-negotiables that you believe that every child or adult should learn when they're in someone else's home? Like no matter what baseline, this is how we should act.
So as a guest, you don't put your feet up on someone's furniture. As a host, you always offer them something to drink when they get there. And I remember one time I had a son who said, oh my gosh, I was starving and my friend was eating in front of me and never offered me anything. He just ate and ate and ate. So that's something I always tell them. Anything that you're eating, you offer to someone. Like, I don't even like eating in front of a repair person. I just feel weird about it. You always should offer what they're having. And then just be courteous. For kids, you'll hear a lot, well, I'm the guest, so we get to do what I want to do because that's what parents teach. But then you also have to teach your child, okay, you don't say that. You just say, what would you like to do? Well, let's take turns. I mean, just sort of some cues that you have to give. For adults, I always say, don't come empty handed. Bring something. If you're bringing flowers, have them already in a vase. You don't want to inconvenience your host or hostess by giving them more work to do. If I'm having a get together or a party and you bring me flowers, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with them? Or if someone's really into wine, it's hard to bring wine unless you know about wine as well. You don't know what kind of wine they drink, and they may not like your price point. You just don't know. You just have to be very careful. A lot of people will bring candles. Those who doesn't like a candle, that's something easy. So just coming with something is very nice.
Yeah. No, I love that perspective too. When it comes to the kiddos, I have another question. Mostly I have 7 children. And so when we go to someone's house, there's a lot going on, especially if we're invited. Um, and there's like maybe some sort of structure that's happening. So one of the things that has come up for us has been when maybe the host child doesn't want to have us engage with like their space or their toys or something. And my kids do the same thing when they're like, I don't want any of my friends touching this. I don't want to get into all my stuff, right? So what would you tell to parents to help kind of navigate that dynamic when they have kids either coming to their home or when they're in someone else's home when it comes to like the toys or the activities that are present?
I would say have a few activities lined up. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be a big formal thing, but let's say that you decide, okay, we're going to bake cookies or we're going to have an art project. And once again, it doesn't have to be over the top. But if your child says, I don't want anyone touching my toys, okay, well then let's think of what are you comfortable with? Do you have a trampoline? Okay. Is that okay if your friend's on the trampoline with you? Do we have a pool? All right, we can do that. But just think of some kind of fun activity that you are pretty sure that the other child would like, or maybe even give the child a choice. We can do this art project, we can bake cookies, we can have a lemonade stand. What would you like to do out of those choices?
I love that. And like the pre-planning, right? And you can have the conversation with your child ahead of time, like, hey, what are you
Right.
comfortable with? Like, we have this
Yes.
friend coming over today. There's a little bit of like leadership, I think maybe too, like in that of, oh yeah, this is where my boundary is with this.
Right.
Let's touch it.
And something I teach in Good Guest and Good Host is you do not wander around someone's house. Even if it's, I always say, even if it's your best friend and you've been there 20 times, you don't just go up to their room. You wait to be invited. You don't go into someone's refrigerator, someone's pantry. You do not, I said you can ask for a glass of water, but otherwise don't do that. And always follow the rules of your house as well. If your mom says no soda, just because your friend offered you a soda doesn't mean that you can have one. So I just think that yes, boundary, this is the space that we can go in. This is the activity that we can do. And just make sure that you're clear to the child visiting, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. When it comes to like house rules too, we've experienced this a little bit with, we homeschool our kids and then there's some kids in the neighborhood that like, we all have different household dynamics and different rules for our home. Where does that kind of responsibility fall? Does it go on the child of like sharing the house rules with their friend who's also a child, or does it come from the parents, or like what is that dynamic typically like?
Okay. So as a parent, if my child's going somewhere, feel free to remind them. I know that Mr. So and so is going to give you potato chips, but we don't eat potato chips. Or I see that they have sodas. We don't do that. You may have water, you may have fruit, fill in the blank, whatever it is. If so, you have to sort of give your child some trust. Now, of course, I'm sure mine was like, in someone's pantry eating all the snacks they could. 'Cause I was sort of strict on what they ate. But also, as a parent supervising someone else's child, if I know that the parent is very healthy, I'm going to make sure that I only offer healthy things. Just or I'll say, do you think it would be okay with your mom if you had this? Do you have any food allergies? But probably as a parent, if you're not familiar with the child coming over, I would call the other parent and say, all right, this is what I'm thinking for a snack. Is that okay with you? I would just ask those questions so that way you know the boundaries. But there are parents out there who are like, well, we won't tell your mom. It'll be our little secret that you're going to have a Coke. No, don't be that parent. I know that you wanna be buddy with everyone's friend, but it's not an appropriate thing to do.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that again, communication is a big thing, even for the adults, right? So calling the
Yes.
parent ahead of time, coordinating, giving a quick rundown of like, hey, this is what is to be expected, or for your child or whatever it could be. So, that's super helpful. We can work on this as adults, as parents, and also support our children in learning these skills. You brought up snacks, and we've talked about meals a little bit, but I wanna go a little bit further into table manners. So what are the top table manners that, you wish families would maybe normalize again?
People don't seem to know how to use utensils correctly. It's a problem. And I see so there's American style of eating and continental. So American is, holding the fork like this. Continental is the tongs are down, eating like this. People I think that they're fancy and they're going to sort of do this but they sort of combine it. But I guarantee you, not that I'm being judgy, but I could look around a restaurant and find 10% of the people doing it right. If even that. Most people do not know how to use utensils. There's a lot of information out there. You can go to my YouTube channel. I'm sure, Emily Post is great. She's the original manners guru. Find a credible manners source that sort of shows you how to use utensils. But the other thing is if you're ever in a situation that you're uncomfortable, look at someone who you think knows what they're doing and sort of follow what their patterns are. And you tend which fork, knife, whatever to use. You start on the outside and you work your way in. Um, Follow the hostess, follow her lead, because you cannot start eating till the hostess starts eating. You can't be done until she is done. So just make sure that you sort of know those rules. And also, the sad thing is, restaurants, the wait staff, they're not trained. So something that you're supposed to do is, if you get up from your chair, you're supposed to put your napkin on the chair. They, for some reason, will pick it up and they'll do this and they'll put it on the table, and it drives me crazy. So when they walk away, I take it and I stick it back on the chair, because it's not right. And, most people are not hung up on these little things like I am, because I'm an etiquette teacher. But if you could just even do basic things like chew with your mouth shut, make sure that you thank the person for dinner, things like that, people will appreciate it. I don't think anyone expects anyone to be perfect. And most people don't even know what it is to be perfect, because they don't even know all the little details. But just common sense when you're eating and being polite, that's something that you should just look towards.
Yeah, and that'll take you very far. I'm thinking about the school cafeterias and things where things get a little wild and crazy. It's like, imagine if all of the kids actually stayed in their spot, or they ate with manners, or had a conversation with, when there's not food in their mouth. Just the genuine hygiene related things that go along with that.
And kids notice other kids. One of my sons is like, okay, there's this kid, I cannot stand eating with him. Like, he talks with food in his mouth. And there are adults who do, they just talk. It's unpleasant. So just sort of be aware of your habits. And if you have a child who has bad habits and you can't get them to break it, either put a mirror in front of them when they're eating, or video them and play it back, and they will see how unpleasant they look.
That is super helpful, because we probably all have mirrors and devices in our homes that could
Yes.
record and
Yes.
use that as a teaching moment. I want to go one step further too, because we had talked about how you also teach organization and financial citizenship. So definitely schools don't teach those things. But what does financial citizenship look like in your world?
So it's just basic. So there's about 18 different lessons, just basic things such as saving versus spending. And for older kids, we get into investments and other ways to make money, real estate. But for the basic concept is, let's say that you want to buy something that your parents say, no, we're not buying that for you. Okay, so what are some things that you can do? All right, you could do some chores. You could ask the neighbors if there's any little tasks that, maybe you need to rake the leaves and bag them up. Just things that you can do to make money, and just helping kids set goals and just become really good stewards of their money, and just learn about charitable giving and everything related to, a budget. I wish that that schools would teach it. I remember I had a history teacher in 12th grade who taught us how to write checks, because back then checkbooks were everything. And I'm like, okay, that was good. I mean, I'm sure I knew, but it was good that at least he was taking the initiative to do that. I wish that we had financial literacy classes for kids, because most adults are not good with money. They just don't know how to create a budget. They don't understand or don't put into practice. I only have this much money. I can't spend more than I have. Think of how many people are not ready for retirement. It takes so much money to retire. You cannot predict how long you are going to live. It could be 50, it could be 90. Are you prepared for that financially? If you live till 90 and you retire at 65, that's a lot of years without an income. So these are things, if we can prepare kids early, and I'm sure you've heard that if you would start at 22 instead of 30, all the money that you could have. So it's just getting kids into good habits. And I think the average American just needs to remember, if you keep on spending more than you have, you will never, ever get ahead. It's sort of like going on a diet. It's so easy to gain 10 pounds, but oh my gosh, it is so painful and takes so much longer to lose the 10 pounds. So that's, I think, how people need to look at money. And so so we teach it at whatever level the kid is, just like our manners classes. We start at level 1 for pre-K, go through level 5 adult, that you just sort of reveal more and more and make it more complex as they're able to handle the information.
Yeah, I would encourage parents to do it with your kids too. Like, what a great like checkup on yourself while you're also then teaching and walking through
Yes,
that with your children.
right.
Of course, you're an excellent resource as well with your lessons that you already have, and I'm sure that there's other resources that parents can look into as well. I know there's some like faith-based programs too, if that's more of your
Yes, I've heard of those, yes, that they
yeah.
teach adults about money and just yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a religious perspective, it's not morally right to spend more than what you have. So, it's just on so many levels, it's wise to be or to be fiscally responsible.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. And we can all use a little bit of work and like the little edges and the margins, right, of our life. So I appreciate that reminder as well. And then organization. What are some of those common pain points that families come to you with when it comes to supporting their organization or their child's ability and skills in that realm?
So, was a professional organizer, as part of my business, and when I would give speeches about getting organized, there were 3 types of people in the audience. One was they were a total disaster and just their mind just does not work that way. Another one was like, "Okay, you're giving me systems to put into place, I can do this." And then the third was they were perfectly organized and just wanted to confirm that they were as great as they think that they are by listening to another person talking about getting
A
organized.
validation.
Yeah. So I've tried to sort of once again age appropriate level of, all right, we're trying to get our locker organized. What do we need to do? Let's clean out our backpack. So I actually will find things. So I'll have a manners camp in the morning during the summer and a get organized camp in the afternoon. So we do coloring and things with pencil. So I'll get all the stuff that the kids did in the morning. I'm like, okay, the crayons are a mess. Show me different ways that you could organize this. Should we do it by type? These are Corolla or Crayola crayons. These are another kind. Are the caps where they should be? We could do it by we put all the yellows together, all the greens together, or we could do one of every color and put it in this pouch. So just sort of have them think of different ways to get organized and just to get in that mindset of putting a system in place and how to keep it. Label everything. So for example, in my drawer where I get, where all my cosmetics and stuff, getting ready every morning, I bought little containers to organize it all, but I noticed that it would get messy. So I labeled where everything should go. And all right, so now it's going to stay nice and neat. So just giving people systems and ideas, even at a young age, I think that they can grow into really becoming organized adults. And you get better grades if you're organized.
Yeah, stay on top of all those assignments and
Yes.
all of the things.
Journeyman.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Yeah, one of the things that worked for us too, like I'm very type A, very organized. Like it sounds like we could be very good friends with this.
Yes.
But one of the things that worked for us because we just have so many children, and so laundry was very overwhelming for our kids. And their sizes are so similar because all my kids are very close in age too, and so it became something that was very troublesome for us. And what we ended up doing is getting some bins, and then they actually, on my label maker, I could actually create like an icon because a lot of my kids are younger and they aren't reading yet. And so,
Okay.
like, oh, here's a little shirt. And so, this is your shirt bin. This is your, pants bin. This is your sock bin. And then they each have their own color within our household. So, if we see like a Play Doh or a towel, we're like, oh, we know who that is. Like, someone
Oh,
didn't put it
that is
away.
a good idea. So it's all color coded kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So that's been one of our systems with our large family of like, oh my gosh, we've got to calm the chaos and we've got to be able
Yes.
to also hold each other accountable of like, oh hey, pick up your stuff, but also whose stuff is it? Because we're all in the same
Well,
same
and
general
also,
age range.
if one person leaves out shoes, okay. But if 9 different people leave out one pair of shoes,
Yeah.
so I used to have a system when my kids, so I have 3 boys. I would have a system of you cannot get a new pair of shoes till you turn in the ones that you had.
Yes.
And I didn't have a lot of pairs of shoes because boys, I don't care. But I was like, okay, you need to get into your, basketball shoes, wear your regular shoes, give them to me. All right. Now you can have because otherwise it's chaos. So I
Yeah.
cannot imagine times 7. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, and things just somehow seem to, like, accumulate. They're like, "Oh, well, they need," like, especially, like, birthday parties and stuff, right? When everything has to be put away after is, like, another one of those moments where, okay, we've got, like, 5 extra shirts now that they just got, and now where do they go? How do they fit? And it's like, "Okay, well, then we're gonna take out 5 shirts and we'll pack them away for your brother to pick through when he gets
Yes.
his size." But yeah, I love that. And definitely it's like the household systems that can also be improved, and you can spend less time cleaning if you're organized is a big thing for us. Um, but
And check off charts too. So
oh,
I've created charts. So I have one son who was not organized from, yeah, morning routine, evening routine, good manners chart, good behavior chart, locker chart, just everything that they can just sort of check it off and say, okay, because they'd say, can we watch TV in the morning? I'm like, are you ready? Yes. Check the chart. Did you do that? And they'd go check, check, check. Just to make sure. And that way it was less yelling on my part. I wouldn't have to say, "Go get your shoes, go da, 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 da." I'd say, "Check the chart."
yeah, and it's ownership on them and independence. Like they feel better when all of their stuff is done too, and then they can actually like
Yes.
sink in and like enjoy their show and
Right.
it's
The
not
kids
having to be the nag of like everybody do all your
yeah,
stuff. Like I'm not the manager of all of you. You know what needs to be done. Uh,
right. Yeah, and kids love boundaries, so you're just
oh yeah.
giving them boundaries.
Yeah, and the tools to be successful. I love this. This is such a great conversation. For parents that are listening in and thinking we need this, what are some of the ways that they can work with you, find you? You're based in Dallas. Tell us a little bit more about how your business works and how they can reach you.
Okay, so we have some in-person classes in Dallas that I actually have camps in my house, but also we go to other locations and we're in schools for after school programs are now a big deal. So
Cool.
we're in a lot of after school programs, but people who live outside of Dallas, we have clients actually all over the world. And so we do Zoom, the same thing, but it's just over Zoom that you could have a private lesson. You can get a group of 12 together and have a group lesson. And, we have worksheets, as I said, coloring sheets. We just email it to you every week. And so we really can make it work. You
Amazing.
learn
You're
to do
super
that after
accessible.
college. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wherever you are, Elise can be as well.
I will track you down and help you have good manners.
There we go. There's hope for us all now.
Yes. In
Um,
the world.
just as a lasting thought, if you could say one thing to parents who feel like social skills are slipping, or that encouragement or inspiration for like taking this next step, what would you say to them?
Set a good example. And just so, for example, if your child, if you hear them saying words that you think are not pleasant, start listening to what you say. Or if once they start on electronic devices. So, for example, when the cloud came out, somehow I was seeing one of my sons texting, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you can't say that!" And so you just have to teach them. Like they just don't know. You just really have to monitor everything. And what are you saying on social media? If you're being snarky and all of a sudden your kids, when they're of age on social media and they're snarky, why are you shocked? So just sort of know that they're listening and watching. And if you don't like their behavior, maybe it's because yours isn't great. Or maybe they're hanging out with people who are bad influences on them. So just be aware of what they're modeling.
Yeah, whatever input they're getting is probably what their output is going to reflect, right?
Exactly.
And even from like media, I think is another piece of like if they're on social media and they're consuming things on TikTok or Facebook, Instagram, what
Right.
are they watching? What music are they listening to? Like those sorts of things I think are even more accessible now than probably ever. That often get overlooked, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
we go to ourselves and reflect. Sometimes we lean in a little too hard onto their friend group, but maybe it could just be like what they're consuming. So that's a great place to start too. Well, Elise, I just want to thank you. This episode was so practical, lots of tips,
Oh,
things to be
thank
thinking
you.
about. And honestly, it's a reminder that the little things like greetings, gratitude, and table manners build kids who move through the world with confidence and respect. If you're a parent listening in, be sure to check the show notes for how to connect with Elise. Remember, she's accessible everywhere. Explore all her online options, learn more about her classes, private coaching, especially if you're in the Dallas area for those in person opportunities. And if this episode made you think of a friend who's always saying, my kids won't talk to adults, or my kids just don't know how to act in public, send this their way. Anyway, we'll see you next week on the Launch Family Podcast.
Thank you.